Welcome back to Ask a Lawyer. I'm talking with Lance Avera about workers' comp. Hello, Lance. Doing well, doing well. Workers' comp, I'd like to look at it from two angles. First of all, as an employee, what does an employee need to be looking at when they're employed by someone to make sure they are covered? And if they're not, what kind of repercussions can occur?
First off, by statute, all employers that have 4 or more employees are required to have workers' compensation coverage in place for their employees in the state of Florida. When an employee steps on a job site, he should know whether that employer does in fact have workers' compensation coverage. It may be or is a very important question for the employee to ask when the hire takes place, whether there is workers' compensation coverage in place. The employer is also supposed to post at the water cooler or at the job site a workers' compensation poster. It's usually the arm in the cast.
We've all seen that one.
We've all seen that one. And it's supposed to be in a conspicuous place so they can see that or ask questions about the workers' compensation coverage with that employer.
Like who is the company with, who that is insuring them, that sort of thing, and they can double check it?
Yes, there's usually a phone number on the poster that the worker can call and get information about his rights and his benefits as well.
And you recommend that people do check that out?
They should check to make sure the employer has workers' compensation coverage, because if they are involved in a major accident where there's large hospital bills and the employee is going to be faced with paying those bills. Now, you can pursue a claim directly against the employer, but collecting from an employer that goes out of business is virtually impossible, and then the employee is left with all of the hospital bills. I am seeing that more and more often these days, where employees call and we determine that there is in fact no workers' comp coverage to cover catastrophic injuries.
And so they're out of luck, and probably the reason that the business didn't have it in the first place is financial.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So the employer really needs to ensure that there is coverage protecting him or her when they are on a job site.
And less than 4 employees?
Less than 4 employees, a small company can exempt out from that requirement, but there's requirements for that company. There's statutory requirements that what they must do annually in order to do that.
And they must inform their employees that we do not have work comp, and you need to understand that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now let's take the other side and look at it from an employer's standpoint.
I see where there are a lot of cases where a general contractor has hired subcontractors to come out to the job site.
Like the painters or the bricklayers or the people that...
Absolutely. You've got a general contractor that contracts to build something and hires a bunch of subcontractors to do various work at the job site. You're seeing more and more of these subcontractors using leasing companies to get a workers' compensation certificate to provide to the general contractor. Most, if not all, general contractors will not let a subcontractor on a job site without a workers' compensation certificate. What you're seeing is the subcontractor may place himself or only a few of his employees in the leasing program, gets the certificate, provides it to the general contractor. The general contractor believes that there is coverage in place and permits the subcontractor on the job site. What are the repercussions?
And so 2 or 3 of the main people in the subcontractor's business are covered, but not everyone, and that's how they dupe the general contractor into thinking they have it.
Exactly.
Is that correct?
The employee should still ask their employer, are they covered by workers' compensation? If it's a leasing program, the employee should determine whether they have been provided an employee identification number from the leasing company.
That's how they'll know if they're one of the ones that are under it.
If they get a employee leasing identification number, then they should be covered by the leasing program. If they don't get that, then they run the risk of being faced with having to pay the bills themselves. Now, if the subcontractor does not have them covered, you can pursue the general contractor if he has a general workers' compensation policy in effect. But that affects the general contractor. The general contractor has to look back on the sub and make sure that every one of his employees has a leasing company's ID number if the subcontractor is using a leasing company.
And meanwhile, you're in the hospital in traction, having to pay the hospital bills, so it's something that would be very time-consuming, I would think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if somebody suspects that there is not coverage,
Ask a question.
Find out and get it verified more than just verbally. call the leasing company or whatever you need to do and get that number. You said it's an employee ID number?
Yes. If a subcontractor is using a leasing company, then you can call the leasing company and inquire whether you've been placed on the payroll, whether you've been identified as an employee of that leasing company. And if you determine that, then you should feel safe and that you have coverage on the job site. If they don't know anything about you, then I would be worried that they don't have any information about you and you're not covered.
So you just can't be too careful, can you, Lance?
No, you can't.
Thank you.